It is the ODI World Cup semi-final, India versus New Zealand, and the history has in fact favoured the Kiwis more with regard to the ICC knockout. So what could it look like today? Of course, the practice sessions are on. India will look to progress to the final, being the only undefeated team so far in the tournament with 9 out of 9 victories. In an earlier encounter between the two sides, it was the Indian team that had got the better of Kiwis too. So India will also hope now to settle some old scores as they had crashed out, remember, of the 2019 World Cup at the hands of the Kiwis. Now, there is no denying the fact that while on 9 occasions out of 14 in ICC white ball tournament, that the New Zealand team has come out victorious, but this Indian team this time has steamrolled opposition for the last 1 month, and they will want to strike once again in Mumbai's Wankhede Stadium. So let's try and get an expert perspective, and our in-house expert is our India Today sports editor, Nikhil Nal, joining me this morning. Nikhil, 9 out of 9, all clear. So, of course, it looks like the Indian team is in best condition right now. But is there something to be slightly concerned about, something to worry with regard to the Indian team, or it's all clear?
Well, if you take a look at the way this Indian team has been performing throughout this World Cup, I'd say not much to worry about. They've ticked all the boxes. There isn't any one particular area that seems to be Indian team's weakness. So nothing to worry about. The only thing that, when you look at this game, that you might still have doubts over is the fact that, listen, this is a knockout. This is a repeat knockout of what happened in the last edition of the World Cup. It's the same opposition in New Zealand. And sometimes we've seen this Indian team in the past, in the recent past, sometime not being able to handle pressure. And I think that's the only criticism that can go against this Indian team. Having said that, if you saw this Indian team throughout this edition of the World Cup, you'd think that there's nothing wrong at all in terms of how they've handled pressures, because they've been in some tough situations in this tournament. The Australia game comes to your mind, where they were struggling, losing those early wickets, yet overcame that pressure and won that game. So they've been doing well throughout the tournament, so nothing really to worry about on that front. Handling of pressure is one area where they'll be a bit concerned about. And the only other thing, sometimes conditions are beyond your control. Sometimes conditions, for example, the toss, because a lot has been spoken about the toss here at the Wankhede Stadium. What must a team do if they win the toss? And the stats are overwhelmingly in favor of the team batting first. And if India don't get to do that, then, as I said, those are the elements that come into play. So those will be only the two areas, the pressure as well as these conditions of not being able to bat first, which the stats support, would be the two areas that India would want to be wary against.
Nikhil, also help us understand with the conditions prevalent for now, because whoever wins the toss will, of course, get the decision-making ability. But could Rohit Sharma and the team want to change any approach, the sort of conditions there are at Mumbai's Wankhede Stadium? How is that playing out?
So, just to put it into perspective, what's been happening in this tournament, batting first, the average first inning total is 350 plus. That comes down to 188 when you're batting second. So that's how much of a difference there is. And why is that difference there? Because there is that first 1 hour period where you've seen the ball really do a lot, and most teams that are chasing are losing about, on an average, 4 wickets in the power play. And once you lose those 4 wickets, which is why the totals in the second innings are drastically lower than the ones that you see in the first innings. And that's why you see this discrepancy in terms of batting first as well as batting second. Now, to the question whether if India were to bat second, should the Indian team change its batting approach? I think they'll have to look at doing that. Up until now, the openers have been firing, especially Captain Rohit Sharma. He takes that aggressive role where he wants to set the tempo, not worrying about his own wicket, and that he feels then percolates down to the rest of the batting order. That's been the template that India has followed. That's worked for them. But in case India are batting second, and as I mentioned, there is a bit of swing to begin with, then I think he will need to alter that approach, bat a bit more calmly, be a bit more circumspect in his approach, because once that 10 over 15 over period is done, then it gets to be a batting paradise. Then you can even chase down that 300 run total. So I think you'll have to keep the conditions in mind, and the Indian team then will have to change their approach if they are batting second. But believe you me, if India is batting first, then I don't think it'll be much of a contest. If India are chasing, then it becomes a close 50-50 contest.
And Nikhil, because through this World Cup, what I've noticed is a lot of mentions about when the toss happened, why did they choose to bat? Why did they choose to bowl? Do you think this time as well in Mumbai's Wankhede, toss could actually play an important role?
You could say that. We've seen it like that in this tournament. The only time where a team chasing has won was that outstanding inning that Glenn Maxwell played. So you could say that the toss is very crucial. But why I say with the Indian team, even if India were to lose a toss, it still becomes a 50-50 game because India have been so good in every other department of the game. So assuming that 1 hour is tough to bat on in second innings, the Indian batters have the wherewithal to, play that 1 hour carefully and then, tide over those waves and then, get into the flow a little later. They can do that. Or if in the worst case scenario they are to lose those quick early wickets, even then they have a middle order that can then, recorrect the course of the Indian innings and then take them to the total that they're chasing. So I think they have multiple options that the Indian team can look at, which is why toss is going to be important. You would want to bat first. But in case India are batting second, still they have a good chance of winning this game. Having said that, what I'm getting to here is that you might have a slightly more drier surface in Wankhede for this semi-final compared to the other games that we've seen earlier, in which case India might need to make a few changes, may be getting a spinner. Then that changes a bit of things, but we'll only get to know that once you see the first ball being bowled and we'll get to see how the pitch performs.